Hi, everybody. Veronica Cole here. So, I am so glad that you are here, and whoever you are, uh, please say hello. Post your name in the comment section. As you know, I'm the only one that's visible because I'm doing the workshop, and you can comment. I will I will address your comments after the live. And if you have anything in particular that you want me to address or speak about, by all means, please put it in the comments. You may also DM me, direct message me in Messenger, and I will get those comments if you prefer to be anonymous. Um, all right, so I think that we are just about at the hour now. So let's see where we are. Yeah, it's just about 6 o'clock now. So probably people are just beginning to filter in. And okay. So if you're here, if you just want to say hello, that would help me. There are no comments yet. And many times I cannot see your comments anyway because of the fact that I'm presenting. So don't be discouraged if I'm not really replying to you. It just means that I'm doing the workshop and I am not able to, I don't have that skill set to just go back and forth between comments. So, but it doesn't mean that I'm not appreciating that you're here and that I'm not paying attention. I am paying attention, but I'm paying attention to the flow of everything and how that's working out and the energy of it all. Um, so we are, if you do not have a booklet, please comment that here and you will get the booklet sent to you that will be in your email. So if you have registered, that means you have utilized your email. This is what it looks like, and minus the fact that I don't have my picture on my copy, but my picture is on your copy that you would receive. And today we're at day 3, and I love this segment here. I will go over just very briefly what we talked about the first couple of days. And just as a reminder to everyone, you have the link to get onto my business page, and that's where this Facebook Live is being presented from. So you can go back because for about a week after this 5-day ends, which is this Friday, because this will go on through Friday, it will go on through the weekend and into next week, and then it's going to come down. So if you need to or you want to go back and get specific days or specific information, you can certainly do that. Day 1 that we spoke about is what is sacred alchemy. And we determined that also, sacred alchemy is very old. It's been around since the medieval times. And the theory was that they would turn metal into gold. But what this is really describing is the spiritual process. And the spiritual process is about turning our wounds and turning those parts of ourselves that need to be healed into the light and transforming ourselves. So, sacred alchemy actually transmutes and transforms us. And a lot of my teaching and a lot of my work is based on this because I know, and I'm sure that many of you that are on this likely know as well, that when it comes to inner work, when it comes to transforming yourself, there is a process involved. And that process is always internal. Now, you can do physical things that will help you. I'm not saying that you can't. There are many, many things that can support the body, like yoga, like certain types of stretches. I'm a Kundalini instructor as well as a holistic psychotherapist and a body mind coach. But along with that, I do believe that there are certain things that we can do for the body, which we're going to do a couple of them today, and that will help to transport you and help you to work through some of that blocked energy. Although I was trained as a clinical psychotherapist, what I had mentioned yesterday is that I discovered as a clinical psychotherapist, although it's a wonderful profession to be in, and that I have a lot of wonderful colleagues, I really felt like a fish out of water because the way that I was relating to the world and to the inner part of myself through my own traumas, which I have gone through some of them in this workshop already. One of them is the death of my two brothers 3 months apart. And the other one is through a very serious illness that I had when I was living internationally, and when I had visited India and sustained a parasitic infection, which almost killed me, and it left me. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to process all kinds of things again, and it took me a good probably close to 3 years before I really felt like I was really working my body in a way that it felt safe and comfortable. So uh, all of this occurred, and I had a lot of healing, but I had to do a lot of inner work for both of those things. And in the process of me doing that inner work and sustaining those traumas, um, one of the things that happened to me is that my traumas from when I was very young had never been addressed. Of course, I was young, I was a child. My father had abandoned us, and I was very young. I think I was maybe 3 years or 4 years old the last time that we lived with him. And then after that, my mother and my siblings, we all moved, and we all were raised with my grandparents. And so as a result of that, there was just a lot of things that were not explained to me. And even if they had been explained to me, I think it's the trauma of the unknown, which I couldn't express as a child. Um, my mother was savvy enough and so full of love that I believe that she would have explained it to me. But what she did was something that she thought was a loving act. And she just told me that dad was away, but that he left me these presents. And so I had manufactured in my mind that my dad was away on a business trip, and that's where he was, and that's what I would think of him, is that he was away on a business trip. So if you can imagine going through a lot of your young childhood, living with this type of manufactured fantasy that I had, it was helping me to survive at the time, and it got re-triggered when I lost my two brothers within 3 months through sudden issues, through sudden accidents. And then I had to go through that. I had to go through the journey of the loss. And anyone who has sustained the loss of a loved one, whether you were in close contact with them, or whether you were living with them, or whether they were married or they weren't, or whatever the scenario is, the point is that you had some form of a relationship. They were part of your family. Now, it could have been a very good friend that this had happened to, and I sustained that as well. But at that point in time, I was able to work through that. It was after my brothers had died, and she was a very good friend who had helped me through this and listened to all of my stories. And if any of us have a friend like that, will just listen to us. There is so much beauty that comes from that, and so much good and so much healing just from that alone, without being edited or without somebody frowning or wanting to interrupt you or stop you. And I needed that. This friend gave that to me. Now, I had been in therapy since I was 25, and I've still been in therapy for years, and I really believe in the beautiful support that a therapist can give you, and an objective support. But at the time, as wonderful as my therapist was, and I had her for years and years and years, she couldn't help me through the trauma of what I had sustained with my brothers, and that's when my journey began for that inner healing from that process. So that's a lot of the sacred alchemy journey and how it can really support you in your healing because it is done through the element of love. So, love is the important factor when it comes to healing, love and acceptance. And I was fortunate to be raised in a household where my mother spoke of love frequently. And one of her most famous things that she would say was, "You have nothing if you don't have love. And love is all there really is." And whenever my siblings and I would have a disagreement, she would not get in the middle. She would just say, "You need to learn to get along. This is your sister, or these are your brothers. You need to learn how to get along." And it was just like magic. It was incredible because that was her mantra. My mother didn't intervene. Of course, if somebody was going to be hurt, that would be a different story. But that was where my mother came from. So I was blessed with that. And but yet I sustained a lot of things that happened to me in my younger years. There was a lot of trauma surrounding things that I witnessed that happened in my family and that I had no control over. So if you have witnessed some sort of physical abuse, but you were not the one doing the abusing, or it wasn't happening to you, still the fact that you were observing it is traumatic. So trauma, if you've lived your life at all, and I'm assuming that because people are on here and they're watching, um, you have sustained something that has been difficult, and you may have worked through it, but there may be that part of you, and that's why you're on here today, that is looking for more. You want to heal more, you want to grow more. And as long as you're on this planet, as long as you choose to be growth minded, as long as you choose to make the choice of being the best that you can be, you will continue to grow and things will be put in your path along that way. And this is what I personally believe happens in life, that we have this inborn thing in us of where, in order for us to work through life, things are presented to us and we have to manage our way around it. It's kind of like a giant puzzle, really, and we're all different. And this is one of the reasons why I love being a holistic psychotherapist, because everybody is different, everybody's story is different. Even if there are similarities, even in the same family, we're all different. And so, with with saying that, I want you to know that sacred alchemy, going inside, is the way to heal, and then going inside through the process of community as well. Now, I work with people individually, but I also am an advocate for working within a group of people that you can identify with. And that is a very important thing too. And a lot of people will have certain groups that they're a part of. AA is an example of that. All the different step programs um, that is part of what I'm speaking of, and also things like particular church groups, social groups, which are with people that you may be meeting frequently that really care about you. And then there's also therapy groups, which I was trained in for years. And that's why I'm a big advocate of group therapy, because when you're working in a group dynamic with people who get you and with someone who is skilled in this area, you can move mountains. The individual work is sometimes what you need to get you going, but that in conjunction with a group dynamic is the most powerful element that I know for people to heal, because we're talking about the mind, the body, and the spirit. So I believe that the spirit is a major component in all of this, because if I did not have a spiritual backbone, if I did not believe that there was something greater than me, no matter how I'm viewing it, whether I'm believing that it's nature, whether I am believing that it's just and I say just because sometimes it's minimized, the spiritual element of life, whether it is through a group that you belong to that has a similar belief system and it's based in love. All of this is a very important part of how we heal. And it can never be something that you can minimize by just saying that, the spiritual part of you does not matter or it doesn't exist. Because if you just take a look at another human being, think about where that human being came from. Do you think that came from some sort of a scientist's bottle? Do you think that it just came from sprouting out of nowhere? Well, where did the sprouting come from? And with trees, I think about trees. I've become very close to nature in the past several years, and part of it is due to the fact that I had a lot of time to contemplate when I was healing from my parasitic infection. And I started to look at all the trees and the flowers that were in my front yard and in the backyard. And I started to commune with a particular tree. And I recognized a lot about this tree as being very loving, and something about it was reciprocal. So, as silly as it might seem to people, plants are living things too. And, we know that with Kirlian photography. We've known that for several years. But we also know that trees work underground as a family to help heal each other too. They have their own systems. And that's like all of nature. So, sacred alchemy is a cornerstone. The other thing that I spoke about is our conditioned self. And our conditioned self is the part of us that from the time until we were 7, we were conditioned with all the thoughts, ideas, and actions of other people, and we were internalizing that. And it's kind of like a recipe was made automatically for us. We didn't really have much choice in it. But where we did have choice was in our perception. Because as young as we were developing perceptions about what people were saying to us or telling us or their actions. And because we were very young, if we had sustained trauma at that time, our perception could be very skewed. And so it's a really important thing to know somewhat about what you may have endured. But what's important is that you recognize that that conditioned part of yourself, and much of it is wounds. You do have a conditioned part of yourself that is full of love too. But the conditioned part of yourself, which is the trauma and the wounds, that's where we want to get to work on. And because you want to be the adult. You want to be the adult that is working with that wounded part of yourself. And in internal family systems theory, this has a lot to do with the family that we grew up with, or whatever that might have been, whether it was our family of origin or whether it was a family that we were brought into. But that's what occurred to us during that time, and that's where a lot of our thoughts and feelings and perceptions come from. So we don't necessarily have to go all the way back there, and we don't necessarily have to go into trauma, because one of the things I learned as a trauma therapist is that you don't want to re-traumatize somebody by going back into their trauma. But what happens is through the work, things will arise, and then we examine it. And that's where your intellect comes in, because this is totally an emotional process. It's not about the intellect. The intellect does give you the ability to think something through. But what it really does when these thoughts arise, you start to recognize, oh, where did this come from? How did this happen? And you start to put the pieces together, and you start to become more of that whole individual, as opposed to that 5 or 7-year-old. Remember, I talked about it, that is driving the bus. If you have a 5 or 7-year-old driving your car, where do you think that's going to wind up? Is that going to get you anywhere? I'm venturing to say not. It may have brought you to a point where you could survive, and where you could have moments of love and kindness, but it also can be a part of your internal part, which is very wounded and scared. So I will go on, because for the sake of time, I could talk about this stuff all day long. And because I love it. I love the fact that that I know that there's an answer for us, that we can heal. And I'm a living example of it. And I've healed from several things. And when I say healed, again, it doesn't mean that you're never going to feel sadness about a situation again, or it's never going to arise again, but it's just that it's not going to imprison you like it had in the past. And it's not going to be something that is going to be racing thoughts with you all the time, or something that will just hijack your best intentions, because you will begin to recognize when that wounded part of you is trying to sabotage you, and you can bring in the healing, loving element of your adult to help love that wounded part of you back into the existence of love again. So, what we talked about yesterday was about guided imagery and what it offered. And, guided imagery is such a beautiful technique for helping us to work on our subconscious mind, because, as I talked about yesterday with the unconscious, the collective unconscious it's huge, right? Because it's everybody, it's everything that has ever happened in existence. And that part of us is, and ourselves, that part of us is, in order for us to make some of that preconscious and then conscious, meaning that we're aware, there are certain things that we can do. And that's where guided imagery comes in, because guided imagery, and the way I believe that it works best, is utilizing all of your senses: your sense of taste, your eyesight, and your sense of touch and smell. So when I do guided imagery, I utilize that, and I believe in that very much. As a matter of fact, if you were to go onto my website, which is www.veronicacole.com, there is a guided meditation there, guided imagery. Actually, it is a meditation, but I prefer calling it guided imagery, and you can listen to that there. So now we are at the point where we're going to be talking about creating sacred space. And I'm looking at our book just so that I know where we are. But what I'm going to start out with is a little bit of breath work. This will be about 5 minutes worth of breath work. And breath work has been around for a very, very long time. And it is all about, and it's different than a yogic breath. Now, as I said, I'm a trained Kundalini instructor, but I also utilize breath work in the way that that I was taught. And I'm going to give you a very simple exercise, and it really has to do with being very gentle. Everything that I do is, for the most part, very, very gentle, because I do believe in that loving, kind element to bring out the parts of us that want to come out, that will come out, and that's that inner child, so that we can heal ourselves. So right now we're going to do a very loving thing for our inner child. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and put your hands, one hand on your heart and the other on your belly, and gently inhale. Feel your belly rise. Inhale through your nose and then out your mouth. So it's, and then out your mouth. Let the breath just fall out. Inhale again. And out of your mouth. Inhale again. Feel your belly rise. And notice if your belly is rising, or is it your chest area. No judgment here. Wherever it is where you are. But just know that if you can expand it into your belly, that's where you would like to be ideally. So now we're going to do it to counts of 4, and we're going to breathe into a count of 4, and then we're going to hold it for a count of 4, and then we're going to exhale for a count of 4. So breathing in through your nose and hold it for 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, and allow the breath to fall out. Breathe in your nose, through your nose, to a count of 4. Hold it, 4, 3, 2, 1, and allow the breath to fall out. And one more time, breathing in through your nose. Hold it, 4, 3, 2, 1, and allow it to release and fall out. The last one that we're going to do is we're going to inhale through the nose and then do a short breath out, sort of like this. So we'll do that, and we're only going to do that for 4 times. So here we go with that. Now breathe in and out quickly. 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 Okay. Now, when you are ready, just relax a little bit more and place your hands on your thighs and just notice the room around you. You may feel a little bit lightheaded. If you do, that's okay. That's part of what happens in the breath work. It's perfectly fine. And then we're going to go on. So, does anybody want to write in the comments the experience that they had? Did you feel lightheaded? Did it feel okay? Okay. Anything else that people may have felt? I see Jennifer there. Hi, Jennifer. Just wanted to say hello. And Amanda. If you felt anything, just please comment below and tell me if it feels okay to you. Did it feel difficult? Did it feel that it brought you a little bit more into a place of focus? Okay. All right. So the next thing that I want to talk about before we go into sacred space is thinking about our speech. Now, this was relayed by a Buddhist monk, and why I like this is because nowadays when there has been so much commotion that has gone on with COVID, with pre-COVID, and all the elements that have gone on politically and things that have gone on in our society. And there's been a lot of divisiveness and a lot of things that darken our mind. And one of the things that we can do is that we can look at these parts of ourselves and the talk that we're doing and how it's affecting us. Because, in the West, we have a tendency to think of, our thoughts and feelings and the behaviors that evolve as a result of that, or the actions, which is fine. It's brought us, this point where freedom of speech is very important in our country. We can say what we want for the most part, when we want, and we can demonstrate peacefully. All of these things are very important, but that is not necessarily the place where a lot of people have gone. And I imagine that people that are on this live right now understand what I'm talking about. And because, when it comes to the East, which this is Buddhist thinking, they pay very important attention to their speech because they look at the thoughts and they look at their speech and what it is producing. So some speech can cloud, like I said, and darken our mind. And, the whole idea is for the mind to be clear. We want it to be as pure as possible because that's when we're in our best selves. And as many of you probably know, Buddhists are really the forerunners of mindfulness. And mindfulness is very important. It's a lot of my work as well, is getting us into that state of mindfulness. And to be in that state of mindfulness, we have to be in the now. So let's talk about the different parts of how we're looking at our speech. So, what about speech that is fake? Meaning, in other words, it is false. We say something that's inaccurate, or we lie, or we do certain things that, maybe you thought it was a good thing, and the intention is what really matters here. If you thought that you were doing the right thing and then subsequently you find out you didn't, that it really brought certain things out that you did not want to have happen, um, only you know if you're manipulating or lying. You're the only one that really knows that for a fact, right? So it's very important to look at how true our speech is. And if we can't be in a place of truth, then and by the way, like I just said, we may have thought that we were speaking truth, but in reality, if we weren't, we know that later, and we know better, we do better. This is not about criticism, it's about looking at our speech to expand ourselves. The other thing is divisive speech, which can create conflict. It's done to create conflict. It's done to to bully. Um, Also, gossiping is another one. It brings satisfaction momentarily to the person who is doing it because you feel that you've gotten your point across. And I understand that it makes perfect sense. You want to be heard. And sometimes, we just get out of control a little bit with that. And we may bully somebody, or maybe gossiping about something. But in the long run, what it does is it prevents from having a clear mind because you have gotten you've gotten yourself into this place of intense anger, or something that is over the top with your thinking to create a conflict. And that's not going to bring us peace and serenity, right? And I believe that's what many of us really want. We want to be loved, and we want to have peace and serenity in our lives. So, the third part of our speech that we want to take a look at is harsh speech. Speech that is filled with rage, speech that is a bad habit, actually, because most harsh speech, harsh words, is because that's the way someone has learned to express themselves. And they believe that when they get angry, that this harshness is what they need to be doing. But it bleeds into our daily lives. And I will give you an example. I worked with children for quite a while, and you can always tell a lot about kids by the way that they speak and the way that they interact. And when kids become teenagers, a lot of times, depending on how they've been raised, uh, and not always that, but it is a big element in what they've seen as to how they, provide, wanting to give it an understanding of how they're feeling. Um, So they will say and do anything and think that it's perfectly fine. But in reality, it goes out into the world and it doesn't create a better world. It creates more of the harshness and the chaos that does exist. The other thing, which is going to seem like kind of a funny thing, but it's, have you ever heard of a person talk just to hear themselves talk? It's idle chatter. It is pointless. I call it pointless speech because it doesn't seem like there is any purpose to it other than just to hear themselves talk. And sometimes it's very hard to break that habit because a lot of it, I believe, is probably stemming from anxiety. It's probably stemming from a place where their wounds have taken over a little bit and they need to fill the space up with this idle chatter. And so filling that space up with idle chatter does really nothing to bring any kind of I would say congruency to a conversation. As a matter of fact, there might not even be much of a conversation because somebody's just talking to hear themselves talk. But what I do is I recognize that there are probably a lot of unmet needs and wounds there. So we have to have compassion, right? We have to have compassion. But the thing that we can do when we recognize this about ourselves is practice talking less, trying to be more of an observer, working on slowing down our speech. I was known for being a very, very fast talker when I was younger. Oh my gosh! I mean, like you can't believe. And there was a part of me that took pride in that because I was just very excited that I could speak so fast. But the reality is that you know when I started to learn about you know conversation and the importance of reciprocity and allowing somebody to have their thoughts, not just mine, because a lot of it was about my own little narcissistic ways as a young person. Like I'm the only one that existed, and they needed to hear me. But the reality is that we all have a need to be heard. So we want to create more of a mindful way of addressing others as well as relaying information or being a compassionate human being. So, another thing that we can do, because these are tools that we can do, um, before we speak, I believe it's important that we really understand within ourselves why we are going to share about a particular something before we share it. Is this going to bring harm to anyone? Is this going to expand another person, including myself? Is this going to be, all about me? We really need to understand why we are going to share when we do share. And I'm trying to think of another thing. We don't want to spark conversation with someone just to just to have the conversation. We want to prevent ourselves from gossiping as much as possible. And when I say gossip, I don't mean just, there are times when you're just going to have a discussion about somebody because it's really important. But if, for further understanding or to help you to solve a problem that you're having with a particular person. But if what you're doing is just talking for the sake of criticism and sharpness and just how much this person is not what you want them to be, well, what that is all about you and having some kind of internal process going on about that person, that you're not really dealing with the issue. You're just dealing with your own attempt at trying to uh, not have some of those feelings about them, and because you would think that, when you were speaking harshly about somebody or gossiping, that was really, you're dealing with your feelings, but you're not. So that's another process that we can do. And if we have known that uh, you know, we have lied about something, that we need to, maybe not at that time, but if we can, we need to be more aware of that and just try to speak truth. And if we can't speak truth, then we can't share something because that sharing is what brings you a connection with another person. And it's very important to say nothing as opposed to saying a half truth or just, you know, a lie, right? So there are more elements to that than what we are bringing to light here, but I really wanted to make these points because I think they're all important, especially when it comes to our healing. So now we get to sacred space. And what is a sacred space? Well, it's a PowerPoint. It's a PowerPoint to draw spiritual strength. And, if any of you have an altar, or if you've had an interest in having an altar, you know that an altar helps you to have and obtain spiritual strength. Because if we think about an altar in a family, now I grew up in a quite a religious Catholic home. And even though I expanded my belief system and I'm no longer considering myself a stringent Catholic, I developed a love of all cultures and a love of all different belief systems. And I am spiritual and I'm not religious, but I love a lot of the practices. As a matter of fact, my husband's family is Jewish. I was raised, Catholic, which is Christian. And, there's a melding of these minds here. But again, we didn't raise our daughter with any particular religion. We just raised her in the philosophy of love and kindness and compassion, and helping her to understand the importance of community, um, giving to other people. And she has all those elements in her which are beautiful and which make me happy. And she does understand that there is something greater than herself. It's not that she was just, which I think it's kind of a sad thing when kids don't understand that, because you don't have anything that's a backbone for yourself. And again, like I was saying earlier, you don't have to have a God per se. You don't have to have that. You can have something totally different. You can believe in God. You can believe in a Hindu God. You can believe in the nature as your higher power. And because when I look all around me, I see the makings of God everywhere. There is nowhere in my life where God is not. And I spoke about that yesterday. So an altar helps you to do this as well. And families are key to spiritual development because families are production factories. Whatever we produce in our homes are what societies will become in the future. So, as families, we're cooking, we're raising children. If not, we're raising children, then we're doing things where we are doing other things to build our lives. Perhaps we're studying, perhaps we're making things in our home that are different from cooking. But all of this is part of being in a family. Families are little mini factories. We do all of these things. And when you build a home, you create a culture. And this can support and establish spirituality and God consciousness. Remember what I said, whatever you want to call this, you could call this being or that is greater than you or something. But my belief is that, and in my work, I incorporate spirituality. I believe that there is something greater than me in this world. I'm a part of it. So, altars and what we do there have the power to shape and alter the destinies of families. So, what I had said yesterday is that we cannot control our fate, but we do have a hand in our destinies. We can make choices where our destinies can be healthier for our children and for ourselves. And that would really help us to look at better choices to expand ourselves. And, the basic tenets of that, which I believe is in most religions actually, is love and compassion. Love and compassion are just two of the most important elements in this world, and love is the most powerful energy that there is, and that's why it is a mainstay of my work. So when you have an altar, you are building consciousness. You are learning about a deeper part of you. You are learning how to discern and how to make choices. So when I go to my altar, which I have actually two of them, I have one that's in another room. And that is really, when people walk into that room, they immediately sense the feeling of peace and reverence. And that altar to me is a symbol of all the things that I hold dear to me. And we'll talk about what some of those things that I put on the altar and how they impact my life, because it's like walking into that room. I immediately, I have done this for so long now because I created this with that intention. Wherever I have lived, I have done this. Um, After a while, like your nervous system adjusts to that as well. Like when I walk in there, no matter how I'm feeling, I immediately feel a sense of protection and a sense of love and a sense of divine peace. I feel that there is something that is emanating and it is going through me, and it feels wonderful. And it feels, first of all, like it's bringing me a sense, a greater sense of peace in my life. So, we pray for our families and each other. That's one of the things that we do. And the consistency and placement of an altar helps. So, like I said, I have one in this larger room in my home that is only dedicated to that kind of thing, where I do my spiritual work, where I do my spiritual reading. It's also where if my clients are local, that is part of that room, and it's a very, very important room to me. But I wanted something in the regular part of my home, so I devised another one that's on a very long bureau that I have, that's really filled with certain things that I love, and that when I go by them every day, because I go by it several times, a lot, when I come off of here, like off of the live, I will walk past it and I will see that there. And it's all wonderful, and it fills me with a lot of that spiritual nourishment and spiritual energy. So we can choose a space, and it can be a corner, it can be a nightstand, it can be the top of a table, it can be, oh gosh, I'm trying to think what else. I've known people that said that they had it like on the top of their staircase, in a corner in the staircase. Wherever you go, there is no right place and there is no wrong place. You place it where you put key items, and that you can sit by it, and that it will allow you to have a place of it becomes a place of contemplation. So if you're thinking of it as a place of contemplation, when you look at it, you want that to fill you with something. It should be imbued with a sense of the greater internal part of you that is wanting to come out and wanting to expand, and that has a strong spiritual sense to it. So you might want to pick a theme, and one of the themes that you could have for it is a meditation theme. So you might want to put, like I have little bells on my bigger altar that are used in certain Buddhist ceremonies. You might want to, and that would be part of the meditation theme. And it's also with incense, and it's with candles, and that brings a great sense of the spiritual element and something that is greater than me to myself when I go there. You might want to create one for relaxation. Maybe you just want it to be filled with all the elements of being relaxed and a part of you that is feeling the need to relax will automatically, when you look at that, will feel a sense of calmness because you are creating that in that altar environment. You might want to create it for inspiration. I wrote a book, and in that book, when the book was being written, I would put the pages in the altar, and it was sort of an inspirational thing for me. I mean, when I would meditate, I would think about the when the thoughts would come in about the book, and I would just bless it and really have this almost like an internal dialogue with uh, the internal parts of me that were coming out. You could call them guides, whatever you want to call them. And they would come forth, and I would just have these loving thoughts about the writing and what was coming through. Um, that could be one thing. Another thing could be it could be for strength. Maybe there's a part of you that feels you need to be strengthened. Maybe you want to have some certain oracle cards on there that when you look at them, you feel strengthened by the pictures that you're seeing. I know some people think that oracle cards are really bad energy, but they're not. They're just created for out of this um, spiritual understanding that there is something else in this universe besides you, and that a lot of times people find that, the oracle cards can speak to them through a certain way that they use them, and that's fine if that's what you like. You might want this to be a theme of joy, so maybe you would just pick all kinds of things that bring you joy or protection. Like I do have a particular obsidian on my obsidian stone crystal, which is for protection. And it's a very big one. I got that when I was living in Italy. And I love it because I feel like it brings me a lot of comfort. I feel like instantly like I have a certain degree of protection because I do believe in the energy of crystals, and so that there's that piece that I really value and that I think of as being an important part of my altar. It might want it to be a remembrance. Now, when I say remembrance, it could be, like my brothers that have passed on. At some point in time, I will sometimes put their pictures on the altar, not always, but I will sometimes put their pictures on the altar. Right now I have a Madonna on the altar because that's the thing that I'm really resonating with. um, but if that's what really helps you to feel calm and peaceful, then put pictures there. It could be pictures of your family. Right now, it could be of your beautiful sentient creature pets, like mine is my beautiful, oh, my little Maltese. She's sleeping like a baby next to me in her little bed. And and so I believe in the love of these creatures too. Maybe you want this to be a theme of love. Maybe there's a part of you that is trying to create that sense of love and bringing that to you. And maybe it's you want to put on their hearts. Um, Maybe there is something else that is a loving symbol to you and that you want to incorporate on there. Maybe this is about healing. Maybe you want to utilize crystals for that healing. And the last thing that I've written down is faith. So have faith that this altar is here to provide you with a stronger sense of yourself. Okay, it's an inanimate object. I recognize that. And the real energy and the real healing is from within. But we're physical beings and we're in this physical world. So these physical things can have an impact on us. Our lives around us really impact us in many ways than we can even imagine. Just wanting to make sure what time it is now. So the other thing to recognize is, what do you want? Do you want to bring more of, what do you want to bring more of into your life? Love. And like I said, you could bring in those love objects, and or you want to bring in a sense of peace. Do you want to bring in more health? Now, I really utilized my altar all through my health challenges. And the intuitive messages that I would keep getting from that is that, and by the way, it will increase your intuition to have an altar and to utilize that for your meditation. So I kept getting messages to go to keep expanding. And what I did was I made sure that I had a therapist when I got to a certain point in my recovery of my illness. I made sure that I was eating nutritionally, and I worked with a nutritionist to get the right foods that I needed when I was healing. And I expanded and saw like a PT person that I believed in, not just anybody that was recommended, but I researched it. I also researched other things that had to do with moving my physical body because I needed a lot of work to work through the health crisis that I had with the parasitic infection because it affected every part of my being in my body. I was unconscious for quite a while. I was in the hospital for months. So this was a big piece of recovery that I needed to work on in my life. And I kept expanding and I kept searching, and I would find the right situation or the right professionals to really help me and support me along the way. Maybe you want this to really bring in more joy to your life, and you can certainly do that. You can certainly do that by, again, bringing in certain elements, like flowers. You could bring, I have flowers all the time. Every 1 to 2 weeks, I put in a fresh vase of flowers on my altar. And I have Ganesh in the wall because I love the element of what Ganesh stands for. And it is about, learning, about education. It's about love. It's about working through obstacles. And so all of that is really relevant to me. So I identify very much with that. I also have a vase of flowers in my kitchen on the counter because I really want to see flowers every day when I come into my kitchen. So that's very important to me. So you do things on your altar and in your home that bring in that element of spirituality. I have Buddhist flags that are in my that I'm staring at right now that are on my wall and in front of me, and that brings that element of God consciousness into my reality too. So I am constantly putting small things in different places to remind myself, that the most important thing in my life is developing that awareness, that consciousness that needs to be constantly tended to because we have somebody that I know says we have a built in forgetter. And, that applies to everything. I mean, we can forget if we do not make this a daily routine for ourselves to bring in the element of peace and love and compassion and create and expand that consciousness within ourselves and go out into the world with it because it will continually feed the world as it feeds you. So those are some of the things you can bring into your life with doing that with your altar. But you want to pick out items that inspire you, that represent your highest self, and trust your intuition as to what you pick out. And it can change over time because mine has changed over time. I made up a list of the things that I have on here, or I have had on here, like candles, fresh flowers, herbs, stones. My daughter had gone and throughout much of her childhood, she would pick up valuable stones and she would bring them home. And I have many of them here. I put them on my altar as a reminder of her and also as a reminder of, Mother Earth, as well as the flowers. Crystals, in particular amethyst, because amethyst is a very powerful healer, and I have a very large stone in there that is just beautiful, that is from Brazil. And I love looking at it, and I periodically clean it, and I take good care of it. Books, well, when my book was published, I put that on the altar. And sometimes I'll switch it up with different books that I utilize in my daily meditation. It'll just be different things that I might be reading at the moment. It could also be an article. Photos of loved ones, spiritual figures. Now I have one right now of a Madonna and child, which really resonates with me because I'm resonating with the feminine. And anybody who is a female knows that, women have had a tough time getting into this the scheme of things in life where when it comes to planning, when it comes to being involved, because we've always been behind the scenes, a lot of us. I'm not saying that we don't come out front, but it's been a challenge for us, and that's where the women's movement came in. And so that's important too, is bringing all of this into the altar, the experience that you feel is really you or that you want to expand in. Now, I do something like I also make a collage, and I have certain things on there that I feel that I want to manifest for the future. And I know this is very woo woo. You may not want that. You may think that it's crazy, but I have done this for years. And for years, I want to tell you that all of these things have come to pass. All of them, yeah, all the places that I wanted to travel and live in. Um, Most of it has come to pass. There are still some things that have not, and I need to make a new one. But all of that, that's vision boards are another good element, and you could put that on your altar as well. You could make small ones too. I have made ones that you could look at like a book. The other thing is nature, like shells, and then the stones that I had mentioned, bells, chimes, feathers. And when I was thinking about the bells, the other thing I thought of was, one thing I do love about Catholicism and the pomp and circumstance of the old Catholicism, what I grew up with. Um, because there is just something so beautiful about the energy of the mass and the incense and the ringing of the bells. I always felt, even as a child, that I was being transported with those things. And what I learned later, subsequently, as a much older adult, is that those bells were really for that purpose. They were about bringing you into another state of consciousness. That was the purpose behind them. The other thing that I wanted to say is that there is a sect in Catholicism, a very spiritual sect of Catholicism called the Charismatics. And I believe that's where some of this, because I had attended some of their services, which were very beautiful, and I knew somebody that was very involved with it, and it's lovely. And all of these things are great. I just don't like dogma. I don't like dogma, and because dogma, I think, is man-made and to control. And I think we can all become passionate, loving human beings without feeling like we have to be duped into it or threatened into it. So that's where I stand with that. So let me see. So you want to sage that area, or you want to bless it with holy water, whatever you think, and even with just your words. You want to make that a very, very sacred space for yourself. And you can set aside, 5 or 10 minutes just to be at that altar space and actually calling in the beautiful energy of God to infiltrate every part of you, or the beautiful energy of whatever it is you believe in to infiltrate every part of you. And so, what can it do for you to do this, to have this altar? Well, we're getting close to the end now. I see we're just at 6 o'clock, so I'm going to hurry this up. Well, I think what I found is that it invites more happiness. It enhances your life outlook. Sacred space serves as a spiritual center, which I've just talked about. The focus is on your highest self. It creates peace and it invites positive energy. So, well, that's it for today. We have really gone through a lot, and I'm hoping that people have enjoyed this. please mention in the comments your experience. And because, I love seeing the likes and the loves and the views, but I also love seeing and hearing about what you have experienced and how it has impacted you. And that also helps me in the next workshop that I do, or tomorrow, that I could respond to something or bring something else in. So tomorrow we are focusing on, I believe it's circadian rhythm, and yeah, it's on grounding, and then it's on circadian rhythm, which is another great thing to know about. And so remember, there is homework. There is something that's going to be posted in the comment section shortly. And I have asked whoever does the homework for all the days will receive a book bundle specifically with you in mind, or a gift card. So thank you so much for being here and participating. And take good care. Remember, you can see these until the end of next week, and then they'll come down. So thank you so much. Okay, be well.